The world is a delicate balance of good and evil, and whether we like it or not, both forces exist all around us. No matter where you are, there's an unsettling truth. What you're searching for, be it light or darkness, might just be searching for you too. Sometimes reality doesn't just mirror the horror stories we see in movies, it surpasses them in ways we could never imagine. These are the kinds of stories that make your heart pound, not because they're made up, but because they're disturbingly real. Stories so shocking, so tragic, and so horrifying that they remind us how thin the line is between ordinary life and unimaginable terror. From unsolved murders to natural disasters, here are the 15 most disturbing true stories that will make your heart race. Number 15. Attack of the Dead Men. World War I was a veritable showcase of human ingenuity in creating horrors, but the 1915 Attack of the Dead Men stands out for its sheer grotesqueness. German forces, armed with chlorine and bromine gases, launched an assault on Russian soldiers at Oswiecki Fortress. The result was carnage, burned skin, bleeding lungs, and soldiers coughing up bits of themselves. Yet, defying logic and biology, the Russians, half dead and coated in blood-soaked bandages, counterattacked. Now, imagine this. Men shambling forward, faces barely recognizable, hacking up blood as they charged. The Germans, likely believing they had stumbled into a zombie apocalypse, fled in terror. It wasn't a victory for the living as much as it was a grim spectacle of human endurance, or stubbornness. A nightmare dressed as bravery, this moment is history's way of reminding us that even death isn't a guaranteed showstopper. We mean, who the heck on earth keeps fighting when their lungs are full of gas and their bodies are basically auditioning for a horror movie? The Russian soldiers at Oswiecki Fortress. That's who. These men were less like soldiers and more like something H.P. Lovecraft dreamed up after a bad night's sleep. Number 14. The Porthole Murder. Eileen Gay. Gibson, a 21-year-old actress, disappeared on the high seas in 1947, leaving behind a trail of intrigue, a panicked steward, and one very suspicious porthole. A steward named James Cam later confessed that Gibson had allegedly suffered a fit during their encounter in her first-class cabin. His solution? Shove her lifeless body through the ship's porthole, because apparently that's what you do when faced with a delicate situation. Cam's tale twisted and turned more than the Durban castle itself, from claims of innocence to elaborate excuses involving accidental death. Despite his denials, Cam was convicted, but Britain's suspension of the death penalty spared him the noose. He served just 11 years before walking free, a sentence far shorter than the lifetime of questions surrounding Gay Gibson's tragic fate. Her body, like the truth, was never found. It was a pretty dark and stormy mystery. Number 13. Villisca Axe Murder House. On June 10, 1912, Mary Peckham thought her neighbors, the Moore family, were just running late. What she didn't know was that inside the seemingly quiet Villisca, Iowa home lay one of the grisliest scenes imaginable. 8 people, including 2 young overnight guests, had been brutally bludgeoned to death with an axe. The killer, who seemed to know his way around stealth and horror, left bacon slabs by the bodies and mirrors draped in cloth, as if staging a twisted art piece. The crime captivated the nation, spawning suspects ranging from disgruntled neighbors to traveling preachers, but no one was ever convicted. Over a century later, the unsolved Villisca murders remain a dark puzzle, the house now a tourist attraction for the morbidly curious. It's less who done it, and more, how could they get away with it? Number 12. Mount Vesuvius. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79 is the stuff of disaster movie lore, but the reality of what happened to its victims is far more harrowing than any Hollywood script. In the nearby town of Herculaneum, residents were caught in the direct path of molten lava and a toxic gas cloud so hot it caused their blood to boil and their bodies to vaporize. The most macabre detail? The intense heat caused some skulls to explode like overripe melons in a microwave. While Pompeii gave us plaster casts of people frozen in fear, Herculaneum offered a forensic nightmare of melted flesh and skeletal contortions. Scientists studying these remains have uncovered a tragedy frozen in time, one that's both a marvel of preservation and a gut punch of human fragility. If the volcano didn't get you, the haunting visuals surely will. All right, now, let's talk about number 11, Demon in Disguise. In 2012, Danielle Harkins, a seemingly ordinary teacher in Florida, took a sharp turn from grading papers to attempting DIY exorcisms. After luring her students to a bonfire under the guise of a fun evening, she accused them of harboring demons and demanded that they cut them out. When the teens hesitated, she got creative, setting one student's hand on fire and slashing another with broken glass, then sealing the wounds with a heated key. It was less an exorcism and more a low-budget horror movie. Astonishingly, Harkins only served 6 months in jail, leaving everyone wondering how she managed to graduate from teacher to fire-wielding zealot so quickly. The students were left with scars, physical and emotional, while Harkins became a bizarre cautionary tale for trusting teachers with extracurricular activities. Number 10. The Imprisonment of Elizabeth Fritzl. It's hard to fathom the level of evil required to imprison your own child for 24 years, but Joseph Fritzl managed to reach depths most can't even imagine. In 1984, he lured his 18-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, into the basement of their family home, where he imprisoned her in a windowless dungeon. Over the next 2 decades, Joseph repeatedly assaulted her, forcing her to give birth to 7 children. He kept 3 underground while claiming the others were foundlings left on his doorstep. The true horror came to light in 2008 when Elizabeth finally escaped and revealed the unimaginable truth. Joseph's crimes left scars not just on his victims, but on society's understanding of what monsters can look like. He's serving life in prison, where, one hopes, his cell offers him a sliver of the isolation he forced on his daughter. Number 9. Buried Alive. Nowadays, we can rest, pun intended, a bit easier thanks to modern medical advances that confirm whether someone has truly passed on. But back in the day, they weren't so lucky. In a world without heart monitors or EEGs, people suffering from conditions like catalepsy, where they appeared dead but weren't, were sometimes buried alive. Victorian-era ingenuity gave rise to safety coffins, equipped with bells or air tubes, because nothing says oops quite like claw marks inside a casket. Gruesome stories abounded, coffins unearthed with skeletons in unnatural positions, scratch marks on the wood, or worse, the unmistakable signs of someone desperately trying to escape. Fast forward to 2020, and even modern funeral homes have had their scares, with some poor soul waking up mid-embalming prep. It's a macabre reminder that death's finality isn't always so final. The moral of the story: double-check your pulses, people. Number 8. Pool of Blood. Returning from a relaxing school holiday, teachers at Sydney's Riverwood Primary School expected a typical first day back, until they stumbled upon a literal bloodbath in the cubby house. A human-sized puddle of blood greeted them, and not just a nosebleed-sized spill. This was more than a liter. The school's high, barbed wire fences made the scene even eerier. No trail, no splatter, no body, just blood. Police later confirmed the blood belonged to a man, but that's where the trail went ice cold. Theories ranged from gruesome break-ins to the absurdly paranormal, cue ghost stories. Despite extensive searches and forensic tests, no victim or perpetrator was ever found. It's a mystery that leaves everyone scratching their heads and locking their cubby houses extra tight. Sometimes the scariest things aren't what's seen, but what's left behind. Number 7. Operation Wandering Soul. War might be hell, but psychological warfare adds a particularly chilling twist. During the Vietnam War, U.S. forces took cultural sensitivity to a whole new level of cruelty with Operation Wandering Soul. Knowing the Vietnamese belief that unburied souls remain trapped, the U.S. Army broadcast ghostly moans, cries, and whispers of fallen soldiers through jungle loudspeakers at night. Picture exhausted Viet Cong fighters hearing eerie, disembodied voices begging to be buried or wailing for revenge. Soldiers described it as listening to the dead come back to haunt them, a nightmare designed to unnerve even the bravest. It worked, with defections and psychological collapses following the broadcasts. For the U.S., it was a tactical success. For the Viet Cong, it was a haunting reminder that war isn't just fought with bullets. Ghost tapes? Now, that's next-level spooky. Number 6. Isle of Butte Terror. 6-year-old Alicia McPhail's tragic story is one that chills even the most hardened. In 2018, while visiting her grandparents on the idyllic Isle of Butte, her life was snatched away by a 16-year-old boy, Aaron Campbell, in one of the most horrifying crimes Scotland had ever seen. Campbell broke into her home intending to steal cannabis, but found Alicia asleep instead. What followed was unthinkable. After abducting her, he committed unspeakable acts and left her body with 117 injuries. The community, shaken to its core, was even more horrified when Campbell admitted he felt satisfaction after the murder and mocked the police for taking 2 days to arrest him. Though sentenced to life in prison, his sentence reduction by 3 years sparked outrage. Campbell's heinous crime remains a dark stain on the seemingly serene Isle of Butte, a reminder that evil can lurk anywhere. Number 5. The Fresno Case. When 51-year-old Fresno activist John Lang predicted his own death, it wasn't a vague, ominous premonition. It was specific, public, and hauntingly accurate. Just days before his body was found stabbed and in a burning house, Lang posted a chilling message on Facebook, claiming, "Corrupt Fresno cops are going to try and kill me this weekend." Known for accusing local law enforcement of corruption, Lang had also uploaded surveillance footage of what he believed were officers staking out his home. When the fire claimed his life, the official ruling was suicide, a verdict that raised more questions than answers. 3 stab wounds to the chest and a self-started blaze? Conveniently explained away. Conspiracy theories now swirl around Lang's death, fueled by his eerie warnings and the suspicious circumstances. Whether paranoia or prophecy, one thing's clear. John Lang's end was as unsettling as his life's mission. Number 4. The Tucker telephone device. The Tucker telephone isn't just a relic of prison cruelty, it's the stuff of nightmares. Invented in the 1960s by A.E. Rollins, a physician at Arkansas's Tucker State Prison Farm, this modified crank phone doubled as a torture device. Wires were attached to inmates' most sensitive areas, use your imagination, and a crank delivered electric shocks. The treatment continued until prisoners nearly passed out, leaving permanent physical and psychological scars. This wasn't just punishment, it was sadistic innovation. Although its use was officially discontinued in 1968, the Tucker telephone remains a dark symbol of how far the justice system could bend, shocking both literally and figuratively. Today, the device is a grim reminder of the need for reform and the haunting question, who thought this was a good idea in the first place? Number 3. The Life of Locusta. Considered by many as the first recorded serial killer in history, Locusta didn't just break glass ceilings, she shattered them with a vial of poison in hand. A master poisoner with a deadly reputation, she became the Roman Empire's go-to assassin for hire. By AD 54, her lethal talents landed her behind bars, but not for long. The ambitious Empress Agrippina the Younger saw potential in Locusta, recruiting her to poison her husband. Enter Nero, Agrippina's charmingly psychopathic son, who used torture and threats to coerce Locusta into crafting a potion that cleared his path to the throne. As a thank you, Nero freed her, awarded her a sprawling estate, and even let her teach poison-making to eager students, a twisted version of tenure. Locusta's glory days ended when Emperor Galba took power and ordered her execution. But hey, if you're going to be history's first serial killer, why not do it with style, right? Number 2. The Girl on Church Hill. On June 12, 1977, George Childs and his son thought they were in for a normal drive down Hollycombe Road in Buckingham Township, until they spotted something unusual tangled in the underbrush on Church Hill. That something turned out to be the naked, mutilated body of 20-year-old Sean Eileen Ritterson. Police arrived quickly, but nothing could prepare them for the brutality they uncovered. Sean's body had been eviscerated, with her internal organs removed, her torso stuffed with a towel, and her head bearing bruises consistent with blunt force trauma. Stab wounds riddled her chest, and investigators speculated her death may have been tied to a ritualistic act or a failed attempt to remove an unborn child. Suspicion briefly turned to her uncle, Harry Ritterson, but no charges were ever filed. Sean's murder, both gruesome and enigmatic, remains unsolved to this day, a haunting reminder of just how dark human nature can be. Number 1. British Pet Massacre. World War II produced no shortage of horror stories, but the tragedy that unfolded before the first bomb dropped is a gut punch for animal lovers. In 1939, as Britain braced for food shortages, the government distributed pamphlets titled Advice to Animal Owners, a guide that was equal parts cold logic and nightmare fuel. It suggested relocating pets to the countryside if possible, but for those who couldn't, it offered a chilling alternative: euthanasia. To make matters worse, the pamphlet casually advertised pistols as a handy solution. Within a single week, an estimated 750,000 pets were humanely destroyed, as owners made heartbreaking decisions out of fear and desperation. While officials claimed this was for the greater good, the mass pet culling remains a dark, tragic chapter in wartime history. It's the kind of story that makes you instinctively hug your pet tighter and question humanity's capacity for both love and cruelty. We really hope you have found this video bone-chilling. If you did, well, like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon in the next one.